There we go. All right, boys and girls. I know I've got some of Russell's guys here as well. Uh, I don't know you guys, but we're going to go through the French Revolution today, the start of it. Before we get into that, I hope you guys have had a great break. I hope you haven't been working too hard or at all. I'll be this guy. Before we get going here, this is all going to be on Classroom. You'll have the opportunity to go into the school if you need to view this. The note guide should be posted on Classroom. There's also going to be in the shared folder that Dr. Willman sent an email out about how to access that. It's all available to you if you need it. Quick review here, talking about the Enlightenment, which is where you should have finished up right before spring break. You got Voltaire, Hobbes, Montesquieu, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Mary Wollstonecraft. Voltaire, of course, is a guy here, one of my favorite quotes: "I do not agree with what you say, but defend to the death your right to say it." We've all got First Amendment rights. I don't agree with a lot of things people say and don't really care, but we all have rights there, okay? Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes writes a Leviathan, okay? Life would be short, brutish, and nasty without government intervention. Our man Montesquieu, he's the separation of powers, which you see in the American government today. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he is the, just completely forgot the book that he wrote. That's terrible, complete mind blank. Man is born free, yet everywhere he is in change. And then Mary Wollstonecraft thought people were ready for women's rights. She's a few hundred years ahead of her time, about 100 or so a century ahead of her time. But that's Mary Wollstonecraft there at sea. Okay, let's get into this. Let's talk some French Revolution. Huh? The Frenchies, eh? Yes, I am drinking coffee in the middle of the day. What do you say, Abe Lincoln? Let's do it. God save the Union. I don't have no idea. Here we go. All right, you got your note guide. Hopefully you've printed this off or you've put it in the Googles and you're going to follow along with it. This will all, we'll be able to see who's watched this, who hasn't. Actually, good idea. I might just add this to Edpuzzle, so you have to watch it there so I'll know who's seen it. You know what that's called? Thinking. You guys should try it. Okay. The Enlightenment. Okay, the Enlightenment is a way in which we start seeing the rights of the people come about in the world or in Europe, in European history. This idea permeates as it comes to the new territories here in America. The founding of our Constitution is very much influenced by the Enlightenment. The five basic rights you have as human beings in our First Amendment: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, property. I mean, things that you and I take kind of for granted, but at the time were not guaranteed. And the American Revolution helps lead to those ideals because we can then found our own government. The American Revolution leads directly to the French Revolution, which leads directly to the Haitian Revolution. And we'll get to all that later. We often call these the Atlantic revolutions concerning the Atlantic Ocean. There, the United States on the western coast of the Atlantic Ocean, and Europe on what would be the eastern coast. If you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean from a map. Okay, so French society. Okay, they're divided into three classes, and these three classes are known as estates. Okay, you have the first estate, which is the church, basically the church and the clergy. Okay, it's estate number one, and I can't see my little box in the bottom, so I may be all over the place. I have no idea. Okay, the second estate is the nobility and the aristocracy, the land-owning elite, and then your third estate is where everybody else is at. Okay, anybody from doctors to peasants. Okay, there's a pretty big gap there in terms of their social status. But if you're not a member of the clergy or you're not a nobleman, you're not in, you are in that third estate. Okay, excuse me, had a little acid reflux there. There's your first estate. Look at that cool cat pointing the finger. What's up? 1% of the population owning 10% of the land, yet pays no taxes. Man, doesn't seem right. What about the second estate? That guy seems very tall. Just bad art. I mean, he looks like he's Yao Ming or something, 7'6". He's a monster, but he's got small feet, and he's wearing loafers and tights. Second estate, 3% of the population owns 20% of the land, pay no taxes. So you got that, and your first slide, you've got 4 to 5% of the population owning nearly a third of all of the country. Only 4 or 5% of the population. That's a pretty big disparity there. That leaves 95% to own only 70%. That's not going to work out very well. Okay, living off collected tax money is what these noblemen are. So you've got to go out and collect taxes to keep your livelihood. Right? And then you have the rest of them. There's the sans culotte, looking good there. Looking, well, Halloween's a little early there, buddy. Okay, 95% of the population, they pay all the taxes. They pay tithes to churches. Hopefully, it's a term you guys have heard before. Like your basically a tax to the church, kind of like your I don't say interest, but yeah, I've lost my term there to say as well. Okay, large percent of the population paying all the taxes, and most of these are poor people. When you tax the poor more, you don't get as much money. You know why? They don't have any money to tax. How you gonna tax the poor people and get money? It doesn't work that way. Okay. Here's a little cartoon caricature. I don't know how much Mr. Russell does cartoons and caricature. I do a little bit in class. This represents the third estate here. The poor guy in the tattered clothes, carrying the pick there. He's obviously a laborer of some kind, working in the mines or on the road or in the field somewhere. And he's carrying the clergy, represented by the cross. And then the nobleman here, you can see the fancy clothing, all on the backs of the third estate, okay, which is exactly how it went. Okay, and you have the king. What a schnoz! Holy cow! You have the king. King Louis XVI, of course, built the Palace of Versailles. Hopefully, you guys talked absolutism with Louis XVI, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Charles there from Spain. Henry VIII would fall in absolutism. Okay, he's definitely an absolute monarch, but he's pretty weak. Later in his career, he tries to attempt some reforms. One of the things he mentions, he asks the second and first estate, like, hey, maybe you guys should pay some taxes. And the first and second estate are like, hey, maybe you should not talk about that because it's not going to happen. And they didn't. They never did pay their taxes. His wife, Marie Antoinette, we got some emails coming in. Forge legend, I don't know. Marie Antoinette, big spender. With a face like that, you got to spend some money. Big spender. Not well liked by the French people. Famously did not say, let them eat cake during the bread shortages. That is never, there is no historical proof that Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake. It is a big misnomer in history. Okay. Finally, we have a gentleman from the third estate, Abbé Sieyès, as a member, and he says, what is the third estate? We are everything, but we've been reduced to nothing, yet we want to be something. We want to count for something in French society. Okay, he wants to spark the third estate to gain back some power. They have 95% of the population has no power in government, very, very little. And that's not right. The people need some power, which is an Enlightenment ideal, which is where some of our democratic ideals today come from. There's a meeting in this French society that up until the 1780s, 1789, had not met in, and I'm throwing out a number here that I don't know if this is actually 100% accurate. I want to say 143 years. Do not quote me on that. Do not put money on that I got that right. They haven't met in a very, very long time. Okay, you get one vote per estate. You guys can probably figure out there's 3 estates. How's the vote always go? It always goes 2 votes, clergy and nobility, 1 vote, peasants. They never cross that line. It's always the peasants are getting outvoted 2-1. Instead of voting by population, where the majority of it's in the third estate, each person gets 1 estate or 1 vote per estate. Okay, never works out well. So finally, I get tired of it. They go one day to the Estates General to the meeting, and they're locked out. Okay, and they go next door to a racquetball court. And this has become known as the tennis court oath, where they take an oath to create a national assembly and basically begin their constitution, begin a new government. At this meeting, on the left were more radical liberal thinkers. On the right were more conservative thinkers. That's where today's right and left come from, is from the tennis court oath. I'll bet you didn't know that, but now you do. And for that, you're welcome. So one of the things they do at this meeting is they issue the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. If we were in class, I would have a copy of this for you guys to look at, and we would compare how similar the tennis court, or sorry, how similar the Declaration of Independence and the Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen are. They're worded very, very similarly. The Declaration of Independence is kind of a blueprint for future governments when they're establishing a democratic government moving forward. And the French are the first ones who take what we did and use it for their country. Okay. Soon after that, we have what's known as the Great Fear, where throughout the countryside in France, the Third Estate were going around and destroying homes of the nobility. Okay. They kind of rise up themselves and go attack these great big plantation style homes, these gorgeous estates out in the fields, out in the country there in France, burning homes. There's some murdering, there's some pillaging going on, a lot of ransacking. Not a real good image. However, they're tired of being crapped on by the First and Second Estate. And on July 14th of 1789, the peasants storm the Bastille. The Bastille is a prison within Paris that homes nobody. But the Bastille has guns, and it's a symbol more than anything else. It's a symbol of authority more than a strategic thing for the peasants to take. They don't do that. They just kind of storm this and take the guns. And now you have an armed rebellion. July 14th of 1789 is French Independence Day. Very similar to ours, July 4th. They go out on July 14th and light off fireworks and eat hot dogs and dress like idiots and sing Born in the... I guess they'd sing Born on the Streets of France. I don't know what they would sing. They don't sing Born in the USA though, because they weren't. They're not that cool. They're born in France. Okay. Here we have the king and his family. As the Bastille is stormed and the city's kind of going under revolution, and they're wanting the king's head. The king tries to escape at night, and he gets to the border, and he's got his family there with him. And there's a guy working at the border who actually used to work in the Queen's court. Not court as in like a legal area. He was a servant for the Queen. And he recognizes her. When they hand him the papers, he's like, no. You're the Queen. That's the freaking king. They don't get out of France. They were close. They didn't make it. So sorry. They're marched back in early 1790, heading back into France. Okay. The guy who kind of takes over the next stage of French Revolution is a guy with the greatest name in the history of history, Maximilien Robespierre. Okay, he begins what's known as the Reign of Terror, where we will use the guillotine, developed by Sir Joseph Guillotine, as a more humane way of killing people. If you don't know what a guillotine is, we'll show a picture in a minute. It's a 45-degree weighted blade. You put your head through it, and floop, off goes the old noggin. Instead of using an axe or a knife of some kind where you only get like half the neck, or you miss and you hit them in the back of the upper back and you paralyze them but they're not dead, and the head doesn't quite fall off, you got to hack it off or saw it off. It could get pretty bad. A guillotine, quick, easy, painful. You're dead, move on, next victim. Let's keep on moving. They kill about 30,000 to 40,000 people by guillotine. They were doing some work. We'll talk about Denton here in a minute. Another guy. After the Revolution happens, we have this period known as the French Republic. Okay, the National Convention will declare the French Republic the way of doing things. They abolish the monarchy. They get rid of all religious symbols. And this goes on for a couple of years. In the early 1790s, this is actually a celebration here in this picture to this cult of reason here. They're having a party to this. They kind of go total opposite of where they had been. Time out. What's up, buddy?
Nolan made the biggest mess.
Nolan made a big mess?
Yeah.
What'd he do?
He dropped some cards.
Drop some cars?
Yeah.
I bet we can pick them up though, right?
Cards.
Drop some cards?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you close the door? Thank you. Bye, buddy.
Sorry that I hit Nolan.
You sorry you hit Nolan?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hit people. All right. Gotta love having kids, man. You just never know. Bobo's showing up again. So this happens for a few years in Napoleon. We'll talk about Napoleon in a minute. Napoleon comes in and ixes